All right, quick recap. Over the next few weeks, of course, we're going back to the basics. So this series, we can call it deal basics, we can call it whatever. Why are we doing this again? Because there's a lot of people that are still beginners when it comes to real estate, wholesalers that don't know what deals are, sending bad deals. A lot of people are gators, flippers, private money lenders. They want to get into real estate and they don't know what a deal is as of yet. Okay. So that's what the main reason. What we're going to be covering over the next couple of weeks is, of course, comping, which we have already done, underwriting, rehab estimates, offers, paperwork, and of course, deal financing. We're going to be covering all those topics. Today is, of course, underwriting. And as always, any resources we use in this, you will have, access to it all. Okay, no problem. Last week we covered comping. Does everyone in here understand how to comp? Cool. All right. So just like last week, we will not be moving forward with any of these topics until everybody either says they are confident in, let's say, underwriting, and or I feel like I've given enough information that you can listen to a recording afterwards. So as usual. So who in here understands how to underwrite a deal and who does not? All right, so depending on the exit strategy of a deal, there's multiple ways. Okay, getting the basics down at this point, depends on the kind of deal. Okay, cool. Depending on the exit strategy, there's multiple ways to underwrite and evaluate a deal. Okay, it really depends. We're not going to deep dive into maybe the advanced tactics in this. We're going to talk about single family homes instead of, let's say, multifamily or units that are larger than, let's say, 8 plexes, just for sake of purposes, because there's a lot of beginners here. Okay, we will hold definitely a lot more multifamily and on more advanced stuff like businesses a little later on in our advanced videos. All right, single family home is definitely my focus. Cool. At the end of the day, right, what is exactly a single family house, right? Single family house is, let's say, 1 unit, maybe it's 2, 3, 4, up to 8 units. We went over comping already, so we can understand what the ARV is. So we will be able to evaluate that, of course, initially. But when it comes to actually underwriting a deal, we need to understand the exit strategy. Okay. So let's say whether an end buyer is going to flip it. Okay. Whether an end buyer is going to acquire it for their rental portfolio. And we're not going to get into short-term rentals and mid-term rentals. We're going to talk about regular rentals at the moment. And of course, there's other strategies that someone could do, like pad split and, other methods that aren't the regular, let's say, go-to, okay, when you think of real estate. But anyways, nonetheless, we're going to talk about if you are a wholesaler, you're a private money lender, you're a flipper, you're someone who's looking to buy a house to add to your portfolio or just start out. We're going to talk about the basic deals, okay, to begin with. Creative finance is another topic for another day, okay? So right now, in this specific time, who in here knows how to use a calculator? Well, first off, who in here doesn't know how to use Excel or a spreadsheet? Because we can go back, on the back of a napkin and analyze a deal. So let's use an example real quick. This is the most common calculation that anybody, let's say you're flipping a property or you're planning on wholesaling a deal that's meant for a flipper, okay? Well, what's the typical calculation for that? If you were to do it on the back of a napkin, right, it'd typically be 70% of ARV minus rehab minus your assignment fee, and there you go, right? Well, a lot of people don't know why it's 70%. Okay. Luckily, calculators do everything for you, and it's cool, and you can modify them, and you can do whatever you want. But I want everybody to understand the reasoning behind, analyzing a deal, evaluating a deal. Okay. Because underwriting is not just, oh, use a calculator and that's it. Well, what happens if you're in a different circumstance where you need to tweak things? Okay. Well, an example of that is, well, if you're buying the property yourself, you're not going to include that assignment fee. If you're buying it to add it to your portfolio, well, you're not going to use that typical underwriting style for a flipper. You're going to go based off of other calculations, whether that might be the 1% rule, whether that might be the 70% rule, whether that might be, a certain cap rate, a certain cash on cash return for creative deals. And there's, of course, other ones as well. And so it's like, at the end of the day, we just need to understand, well, why is it that we do certain things so that you can better understand whatever calculator someone gives you. Okay. You guys have access to my calculators, per the usual, right? I'll put it in the chat just in case someone does not have it. But nonetheless. So 70% of ARV when it comes to flipping. Why do most investors look at that? Like, what is that 30% divided into? Does anybody know the answer? Do you want to type in the chat? Okay, closing costs, commissions. Well, companies to run. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Right off the bat, if you're a flipper, you probably want to make anywhere between, let's say, 10 and 20%. Most people like to stick with a basic on their calculators at, let's say, 15, as to keep it as an average that it works for most flippers. But of course, that could be tweaked from 10 to 20%, depending on if you know your end buyer. If it was me flipping a property, well, of course, I want to see more than 20%. I'm a different circumstance. Next thing, of course, as mentioned, agent commissions. Typically, that's anywhere between 3 to 5%. If there's no buyer's agent, it could be 3%, could be less. But let's just say 5%, max it out. If they're a higher volume flipper and need to keep their crews busy, it could be 10%, correct. Yep. Closing costs on both ends. Sometimes when we buy deals in creative finance, we pay for the full closing costs ourselves as a buyer. And then let's say you plan on wholesaling it to a flipper. Well, that flipper most of the time does not pay for closing costs unless it's an off-market deal. All market deals, the seller pays for it. But nonetheless, you can think of it 2% on the front end, 2% on the back end. Okay. So that's another 4%, 5% with the agent. Let's say another 15% for your flipper. What's left? Well, there's closing costs, holding costs. If they're using a hard money lender, well, there's points. There's utilities, maintenance while you have the property, while you're, let's say, holding that property. And so you got to take that all into consideration. And so holding costs, depending if there's a lender involved or not, and all the miscellaneous stuff, could be anywhere between, let's say, 1% and 6%. It varies a lot between, end buyer to end buyer, and what they have as far as, they're using their own money or hard money. And so if you think about that, that's roughly 30% there. You can cut that down if you wanted to, if you know your end buyer. But that's why when you go to any mentorship, you go to any community, it's like everybody evaluates the deal at 70% of ARV minus rehab minus assignment fee. And that's your MAO, your maximum allowable offer. Does that make sense as to why there's a 30% gap there? And how you can tweak it? So, but instead of doing it on the back of napkin, because you could take any deal right now that we comped previously or a new deal and just say 70% of ARV minus whatever you think of a rehab and put your 5 to 10, 15K assignment. And there you go, call it a day. That's your MAO. Calculators, of course, are more advanced than that. They don't just go based off of the 70% rule. you have the ability of tweaking every little detail of it, okay, to make it more accessible for yourself and on a deal-to-deal basis. Now, if you haven't done so already, because I'm going to open up the spreadsheet on my end. Here, let's just do this. In the link that I provided, if you go to, what is it, Triple C Solution, the calculators, comping and underwriting, if you click on that, you'll find calculators. Oops. Calculators. And then the ones we're going to go over today are the MLS outreach, because that one's one of my favorite ones. And then, of course, the deal calculator, the Creative V4. We're going to go over both of those. So I pulled 2 deals. Does anybody in here? Yeah, you can record. Does anybody in here have a deal they want to look at before I pull up the deals that I have? I just pulled up 2 deals randomly that I just picked out literally before this live, so that you guys can see that these are actual deals, right? And you're more than welcome to comp them and do whatever you need to do. So I already have these pulled up. Here's the 2 properties. And you guys have them. You guys should have this one because this one's built in the actual folder. But take a look at these deals. Okay, we're not going to go into rehab estimates and deep diving into like what does everything cost, because that's not the point of this one right now. Okay, the whole point of here is like assuming you think the property needs a basic renovation. Well, how would you calculate that? Okay, we're just going to use quick math for that portion. But really, we're going to deep dive into, well, how does a calculator work? And whether it's this calculator or this calculator, it doesn't really matter. They're all the same thing. They all operate the same way. It's just this one, you can look at more deals at one time. Okay. And so for someone who does MLS outreach, well, they might list out, these are probably a lot really old properties, but anyways, list out a bunch of properties that they're targeting. Okay. And evaluate them all. And any ones that are probably in the green, they'll probably call them first. It's like, okay, well, those are strong deals. Well, that's besides the point of this. The whole point right now is to understand a deal, right? You got the ARV in the last session. You figured out what the ARV is. You know what the seller is asking. Do we really care what the seller is asking? Not really, when we're making an offer. But we do in a way because we don't want to seem like a low ball. And this is, of course, if it's on market. If it's off market, then you're probably not going to know what the seller is asking unless they tell you over the phone and so forth. So the calculator does it for you. It's really simple. You put in your ARV, you put in what the seller's asking, you put in what type of renovation level property needs, and then you put in the square footage and it automatically calculates it for you. Now, this is a simple one. This is not a deep dive. Okay, again, this is meant for people who are finding a lot of properties and they just want to evaluate them before they put them in their CRM, before they, actually deep dive and analyze it and talk to them on the phone and actually figure out what's wrong with the property. And then you can update your rehab budgets later. Okay, this is just a quick way, like if you're going on the MLS right now and you find a bunch of properties and you think there's comps for them and you have an ARV that looks better than what they're asking, then you can put it on here. Okay. When I used to do MLS outreach, this is what I used. This is what I created. Okay. This is before CRMs were involved, hence the kind of follow-up sequence that's on here. Okay. Before CRMs were involved. But till this day, when I want to evaluate a deal, I still go back to these 2 calculators. Okay. Because here's the thing. If I just want to know real quick, are we even close to what they're asking? Like this one right here is a 68%. This one right here is an 81% to what they're asking. Well, chances of me locking up this one right here that's in orange is probably less than me locking one up that's in green. Okay, and most calculators don't have this feature, by the way. But what I do like about this calculator is this is if you're evaluating it for, let's say, a flip, but also it deep dives into, let's say, if it's a rental. Okay, if you know the rental rates. It'll tell you what the design, if you're looking, your buyer will buy at a 6% cap rate. or they'll buy at a 12% gross yield, or the 1% rule, or the 70% rule, or they're looking for a certain dollar amount in cash flow, you'll be able to pull up all that information. Okay. Now, to deep dive and know what these actually mean, you probably want to learn that, of course. Okay, because like knowing the basics of 70% minus rehab, and it tells you what your MAO is, versus when your buyer wants a 6% cap rate and it's a completely different number than what the MAO is for a flip. Well, it's like, well, why? What does that even mean, desired cap rate of 6%? What does it mean to be the 1% rule? And so we're gonna take a look at these, but one step at a time. Okay. So this property right here, let's pull this one up on Privy just so we can kind of see some pictures. I don't even know what it looks like. Okay, so here's the property. It's in all right shape. We can't see what's going on the inside. Typically, when they put something like that, it typically means there's a tenant involved and they don't want to show the inside of the house. Well, we don't know until we call them, right? We can only assume what issues this house might have at this moment. The same thing for off-market deals. You get, let's say, an off-market lead that you're talking to. Well, you don't know anything until you set inspections. In fact, most of us just send offers and get it under contract before we get an inspector out there. And so here, let me just close this. And so it's like, that's the typical direct to seller. We'll make an offer and we'll get it under contract before we go and do an inspection, before we get profile pictures or pictures of the house, get boots on the ground out there. And yes, Luke, people do consider cap rates on single family because there's a lot of people that still buy cash. What is the cap rate? Basically, it's like, well, how many years am I okay with before I finally break even? Same thing with the cash on cash return. The only difference between a cash on cash return and a cap rate is one, you're creative. Number one, you're putting a lesser amount down and you are creating a certain ROI to eventually recoup your funds. And so like those of us that like to buy creative deals want to see some sort of cash on cash return between a 10 and 20, preferably more even, the 10 and 20% for most people. Unless it's like an Airbnb. So this deal right here, I don't know what's going on with it. I can only assume I got to do, if there's a tenant in there, well, I probably got to replace, floors, maybe walls, as a lipstick. But at the same time, what if it's something major like the kitchen and baths that need to be done in the house? So I'll consider it as a basic renovation until I call that person, until I call that agent. And based on that point, we'll decide what else. So right now with this deal, I assumed it was a basic renovation. Okay. If you notice in this calculator, there's carpet and paint as if it was a rental, which is like really cheap. Like I think it's like $15 a square foot. There's lipstick at $20. And there is a breakdown of this if you want to look at it. I think you can change those numbers depending on your region. But anyways. So basic renovation, full renovation, luxury, full guts, low end luxury, and extra luxury. Those are my kind of criteria. You might not need those. But how varied are they per region? Well, if this is Tennessee, well, let's just say a basic renovation could be $35 a square foot in Memphis, versus in Florida it could be $45, even $50 a square foot in certain areas. California is probably very similar to Florida. Like you guys are expensive. Daniel can probably answer that better, but I don't do deals in Florida and California. But anyways, understand your area. And the way to really understand your area is like, and we'll get into this more in rehab budgets in the next Zoom. Okay. But like ask other fellow people who are doing deals there. Or better yet, go get quotes and find your average when you get all their quotes. Okay. And you'll find what the average cost is in your house. Most people don't do this, especially if they're wholesaling, especially if they're investing using private money or gator lending. They don't want to do that. Connectors don't want to do that. And so this is where we fail. Okay. Not only in the underwriting, but also in the rehab side of things. But nonetheless, let's continue talking about underwriting a deal right now. So we're going to assume this is a basic renovation. We know the seller's asking $319. So $319 is what they're asking. And estimated ARV, I think, pulling whatever comps, there was only 2 comps for this one, whatever it is, okay? Once you figure out your ARV, well, you're going to plug it in. The calculator does the rest. Well, it's going to tell you, well, I need to lock up this property if I want to flip it at 217. Okay. Well, the seller is asking 318. That's $100,000 less. Do you really think someone's going to accept that deal? Probably not. Okay. Now, what if we talk to them on the phone and it really is just rental and we can keep it as a rental for another buyer? Well, in that case, we'd probably change it to a rental grade or some sort of lipstick at that point and evaluate the deal and see, well, not so much on the MAO calculator, but what does it look like from a desired cap rate or that 1% rule? Okay. A desired cap rate, 327, is actually more than what the seller is asking for. Okay. And by the way, these take into consideration your assignment fees. So if you edit this and you change it and you reduce the price, it changes the numbers. Okay. Well, if you have a buyer that says, oh, I want a 7% cap rate, because you're going to find those. Well, that means we got to lock it up for 280 to make any kind of assignment fee. And so that's if you're a wholesaler. If you're an actual end buyer yourself, well, take out the assignment fee, make that 0, and you're okay with buying deals cash. Well, now you determine what type of buyer you are. Do you prefer the cap rate model? Do you prefer, the 1% rule, even though you can't really do that in California or Florida? You might be able to do that in Memphis, Tennessee. Ohio, you'll be able to do the 1% rule, but you won't do that here in Florida. And so like every area is different. Okay. Every buyer is different. You as an investor might be okay with a 5% cap rate, meaning you won't get your money back till 23 years or something. Versus someone with a 7% wants to get their money back in, let's say, 14 years. And so just understanding that point is really important when you're, let's say, acquiring a deal to dispo it, to wholesale it. Now, let's take the same exact deal because these are just, example deals at the end of the day. But let's take this exact deal and we're going to say, okay, the ARV was 387. Let's plug it into a different calculator. Okay. So ARV was 387. I guess, what was it, 600 or something? Who cares? And let's see, square footage is 1314. We're going to switch this back over to, let's say, a basic renovation, closing costs, whatever. Okay, hard money. This project probably won't take longer than, let's say, 6 months. And we'll remove that. We'll put an assignment fee in here and we'll say we want to make, I don't know, $10,000. Okay. So you look at this deal, forget everything here to the right. I should probably hide this for you guys right now, but whatever. Just ignore this on the right for now. If you look at this deal, well, it's telling me my MAO should be 215. Well, what if you know that your buyer is not using hard money? Right? If you know your buyer is not using hard money. Oh, this should probably be 100%. Well, what do you want to do at that point? Well, what would you do in that scenario when you know your buyer is not going to use, hard money? Well, you would take out all these fees because all this is irrelevant. You can save right now and make an additional $16,000, right, in total money cost. Because if I delete that, that makes my offer stronger. Knowing your end buyer makes a difference. If you're going to, let's say right now, let's just use an example, and you're going to find private money, okay, to do this flip as an end buyer. You assign this deal. The end buyer is okay with making $58,000 in profit. They want to get a lender that's going to fund, I don't know, 15% interest only to fund the gap. Here, let's change this. And let's do it like this. Okay. So you're going to find a private money lender that's going to fund the entire gap, which is essentially, you know, the 15% difference between the hard money's funding and what you got to bring to closing. So 15%, the points you got to put down, any closing costs that you got to pay, any recurring or monthly maintenance, and so forth. Well, you might bring a lender that's going to pay, let's say, $16,000 or $17,000. You pay them 15% interest every single month. They make a certain amount of money. Well, is it still a deal for the flipper? Is it still green? Are they still okay with making that 14%? Because here's the thing, right? Like we'll get deals all the time, and you know, Daniel, you can speak on that behalf. Out of how many deals that are sent to you, how many of them are legit deals? Like realistically,
96%. I crush them, so I turn them
96%
down
you crush them.
because they're bad. I mean, they're just not underwritten correctly, or they're just bought. They're just paying too much for it.
Well, why is that? Because they don't understand the ARV, or they
I
don't
mean, that's
understand.
mainly it. I mean, the wholesalers that put the deal together are just overpaying for it, right? And then the fix and flipper who is actually buying the deal is not underwriting it correctly. So, either way, I mean, so one side or the other, somebody's putting the deal together incorrectly and they're not underwriting it correctly.
Okay.
So either you pay too much or you locked it up too high. It's one or the other.
Okay. And in your opinion, if someone were to use a calculator like this, do you think they would have a better chance of, getting a better deal?
True, but they still need to figure out how to do ARV, right?
We went over
That's
that last week, right?
yeah,
Uh, Comping is one of the most important things.
exactly.
As a wholesaler, one of those is not our problem. Which one, Luke?
What
The
the whole
rehab?
being a wholesaler?
Is a buyer locks it up high. That's to our benefit. I mean, that's true, right? But here's the thing: it's like a lot of people. I mean, Daniel, don't wholesalers come to you for EMD?
Yeah, all the time. And I tell
And
them
you're
like,
crushing 90 something percent of those too.
yeah, well, like the ones that are new that is their first time dealing with me, yes. But I teach them how to do it, right? And I go through the whole underwriting process. Why is a bad deal? So next time when they bring me something, it's actually a legit deal that I can fund and they
So
can sell.
you're an educator, Daniel. That's why you
Correct.
do it. But
Right.
if it's somebody else is an MBAR, do you really think they're going to do that?
Or not. Never.
No, they're going to tell them, I'm sorry, fuck off and go find me another deal that's better than this, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, not a chance. And so it's like it's really important, or just ignore them forever. Yeah, it's really important to not burn bridges. Well, how do you not think about this? Real estate is a relationship game. You send me a bad deal, I might teach you. Daniel might teach you. You send somebody else a deal. Let's just use Lizanne as a big bad wolf. And we'll say you send her a deal. She looks at it and tells you, never send me a deal ever again. Well, you just burned a relationship with her. And by the way, 90% of buyers are like that. The moment they see a bad deal in their inbox or their SMS, they just block you. You can't even reach out to them ever again unless you physically call them. And they might block your number too. Don't get me wrong, I've done that before because I've trained people and I tell them repeatedly that this is a bad deal and learn how to underwrite. And I show them how to underwrite and they still send me bad deals. Eventually, I just block them. They burn their own bridge, right? And so the whole point of this entire series is to make sure you're not burning bridges, you're not burning relationships. And the first most important method of doing this is, of course, learning how to comp and underwrite understanding the rehab stuff, learning how to do proper offers, not just locking up anything. And then, of course, all the financing and paperwork and all that stuff is later. We'll get into all of it. But like, if you know how to comp and underwrite, no one will have a problem at the deal that you send them because it's a good deal. But a lot of you guys don't know what a good deal is. The whole point is to, like, right now, it's like if 90 something people are sending Daniel deals for funding, well, it's like, well, can we at least get that down to 50% in the next month? That would be nice. I highly doubt it, but like, it would be nice for a lot of people. It would mean that people are actually learning and actually implementing, things instead of just watching a video, right? Remember, the whole point of this is taking action. And so I'm giving you guys the resources here to use it. And if you want to tweak it, tweak it. I don't really care, but like, just know how to evaluate a deal. Because the last thing I want is to see you not succeed because you locked up a higher deal and having to cancel it. Because it's going to happen. When I first started and I went live, granted, I went live in the sub2 community, so a lot of you guys don't know. Some of you guys do. But I went live for 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, I locked up 15 deals. But guess what? I disposed one of them. I was a beginner. I didn't know shit. I didn't know. I mean, I understood calculators because I built my own, but like I had to continue tweaking it, tweaking it to the areas that I was in to make sure that I was actually doing it properly. Because you could take anybody's calculator right now and use it. That doesn't mean it works for your area. You can take mine, it doesn't mean it works for your area. And so you just got to make sure you put in these certain variables that's in your area. And you also need to just be extra precautious with your comping and don't go for highest and best like most wholesalers do. No problem. Appreciate it. So let's go back to this, okay? Because I want everybody to at least know how to use at least one of these calculators. It doesn't matter which one. The whole goal here is you know how to evaluate a deal. Okay, I'm going to break this calculator down real quick, and it's pretty simple. Well, you have your square footage of your property, which takes into account your renovation level, any additional renovation level, and populates your rehab cost. If you are not the wholesaler, but you're a buyer, right? Well, you could kind of estimate what their assignment fee is, right, based on what they're asking. But at the end of the day, let's say right now it's like you're going to buy this property to wholesale it to make 10 grand. Well, your MAO needs to be a 215. If you know your end buyer doesn't have hard money and they're using their own cash, well, maybe you can lock it up for 230 and still make a 10K. But knowing your end buyer comes first before that. So instead of knowing your end buyer, because a lot of you guys don't go for your buyers first, which you should, by the way, is be precautious and assume they're using hard money. In fact, don't assume that they're using 1.25 points. Assume they have around 2 points because they're using some broker, not a hard money lender. Assume that they're not getting a 10.5 or interest rate. They're getting, let's say, a 12.5 because interest rates are bad now. Well, that affects your deal. That literally went down $4,000. Can you make a 10K assignment fee now? No. You might make 6 if you need to keep this at 216, right? Like you might make less money. How are you calculating holding costs without the PITI? I am calculating holding costs with hard money. This has nothing to do with subject to, Luke. Yeah, we'll get into that more on the rental side down here. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about, let's say, wholesaling a flip. Now, if you're going to, let's say you're a gator or you're a private money lender and you're lending on this deal and they come to you saying, oh, I need, X amount of dollars, right? Well, is it a good enough deal? Does that have good enough spread for you to lend on? For you know that they're gonna make money? If you're a Gator lender doing EMD, and let's say you know the MAO is 211 because you calculated the deal yourself as a Gator, and your wholesaler comes to you locking it up at 230, telling you they need EMD. Do you think that's a deal to lend your EMD funds to? I don't think so. Luke, would you fund an EMD deal when you know that the wholesaler has it locked up a lot higher than what it should be? Exactly. But here's the thing: there's so many people, so many Gators. There's what 9,000 Gators right now, lending on deals, getting screwed out of deals. Not making money. Sure, they might have extra precautionary measures that get their money back, but it's like, why'd you invest in a deal that was bad to begin with? You should know by looking at a deal that it's good or bad. If you come up and it's like, oh, it's like a 5K difference, well, okay, you can let that slide, but not a 20, 30K difference. There's no way the wholesaler's going to make money. Therefore, there's no way for you to make money because you know they're not going to be able to assign it. But let's go back for a second. When a wholesaler asks you for EMD funds, what does that typically mean? Well, number one, they don't know how to wholesale because they don't have their own money. Or, like, don't get me wrong, we will use EMD funds, but for larger deals, $20,000 EMD, $40,000 EMD, $60,000 EMDs. But typically, the most common is when a wholesaler is asking for $500 to $5,000, they don't have money. And they're trying to do a deal with $0 out of pocket. And therefore, you better verify that their deal is good. As a lender, number one thing is due diligence. But we have a lot of people throwing money at deals when they don't even evaluate the deals. And so, like, part of this, going back to the basics is underwriting, right? You might not know how to do rehab budgets yet. You'll learn that next week. But you can at least look at a property and be like, oh yeah, kitchen, baths, flooring, paint. Okay, basic renovation. We'll just consider it that. Flooring and walls, lipstick. Oh, the floorboards are gone and the drywall's already taken off. Well, got it. Whatever. You can at least know the basics. But a lot of you guys don't even know that yet, right? And so it's like, use a calculator like this, and you can, again, like we'll continuously going over this. Like, it's like the next stage is going to be the rehab budget, and we're going to use this calculator again. Okay. Doesn't matter which calculator. It doesn't really matter. It's all the same thing. It spits out the same number. As long as the variables are all the same. So double check before you're lending money. If you're planning on wholesaling, well, make sure your ARV is correct, your comps are correct, your rehab budget's correct, or else your MAO, your maximum level offer that's on your calculator is going to be incorrect. Now, let's assume this is for a rental. Okay. Let's assume this is a rental. Now, in this calculator, you can do whatever you want. There's so many features. But I'm going to keep this a long-term rental, cash only, and then who's paying for it? Yourself and not a private money lender. Let's see, purchase price. Let's say we said, we know the seller's asking for something, right? The seller's asking for, $319. So let's just put $319 in here and see what happens. Exactly what the seller is asking. Doesn't mean we have to give him it. How much is the rent for this particular property? I think it was like 3,000. So rent is around 3,000. Well, let's see. Cash down, loan balance. Well, okay, so if you're buying this house cash as an end buyer, or you're assigning it to an end buyer who's paying cash, well, what's the only fees that they really have? Taxes and insurance, right? Water and electric. Okay. And so if you take that into consideration, now these are all again metrics you need to take based on your particular area. For example, I know in my area of Florida that if I use 1% for both taxes and insurance, there's actually a better way to calculate this based on the tax assessor. But either way, I know that if I use 1%, it's pretty damn close. Okay. And why aren't these numbers the same? Because they're not taking it, but whatever. I know that 1% of the purchase price, and here, let's actually fix this so that you guys have it correct. 1% of this purchase price is, these need to be divided by 12, is going to be your taxes and insurance, right? And so it's like, even if you pay for the property cash, you're still going to pay taxes and insurance. There's still going to be vacancy maintenance, CapEx, property management, all those fees. There's not going to be an interest rate because you don't have a loan on it. So you might have still a balance, even though you can make $3,000 in rent, you still got to pay something. And we got to take that into consideration. So we know what our net cash flow is, right? And so if you see over here to the right, our net cash for this particular property is $2,000. If someone bought this deal right now using cash, well, you can see the cap rate, you can see the cash per door, you can see the gross yield. Well, what is your buyer like? What are you as a buyer like? Does any of this meet your criteria? Because if you're okay with a 6.5% cap rate as a buyer, well, this is a deal right away. You would buy it on market. You don't care about waiting for a wholesaler to send you this deal. Now, at the same time, it makes $2,000. Do you understand why there's a lot of buyers out there that pay cash? Because they care about cash flow more than they care about financing stuff. They have a lot of cash. There's a lot of buyers out there that will pay cash for a rental. It's just most people, when they wholesale a deal, they go for fixer-uppers. A lot of wholesalers don't know you could wholesale a rental property because they don't know how to evaluate it. At the end of the day, you still need comps. You still need to understand what's the condition of the property. But if someone's paying for cash, or let's say, hell, let's switch this up and convert it to a traditional where they put 20% down, like a DSCR loan. They got to get approved for it. And so like now they're putting $63,000 down for a DSCR loan. And of course, let's see, what's their interest rate on it? I don't know, was it 7.5, 7.75 right now? It's like you put that in here, you're going to see right now that the PITI changes. Now, if they bought it with the current rates, they would only net 190. Is this really a good deal for somebody? If they're a traditional buyer that's going to use a DSCR, or they're going to use some sort of lender, a business loan, whatever you want to call it, they're going to put 20% down. They're going to get a loan, an interest rate of 7.75. Is this a deal for somebody that's that type of buyer? Probably not. Most likely not. Number one, the cash on cash return is like under 3%. Number two, it only makes 190. And what if oh shit, something happens? It's like I would like to see it at least $300 to $500 before I even think of a deal. That'd be net in my pocket after vacancy maintenance, capex, property management. Well, what type of buyer are you dealing with that you're assigning to? Do you actually understand what your buyer wants? Because I'll say this right now. No one till this day understands my rehab budget when it comes to my luxury fix and flips. No one. Not one fucking wholesaler. Excuse my language. Like literally. No matter how many times I repeat myself. That's sad. And I've talked to thousands of wholesalers. But that's just the reality, right? Nobody cares to really understand their buyer. And instead, what they like to do is lock up deals wherever they think is good and just mass blast it out to their buyers. Go ahead, Daniel. I say you're you gotta unmute yourself.
No, so that is true though. Like, don't lock up everything. Just lock up things that make sense, or else you're just wasting everybody's time.
Yeah, I get excited when it comes down to this stuff. So honestly, just tired of bullshit wholesalers.
Well, I just got off the phone call with one. I just told him this is a really bad deal, man. I told him
You should
why.
tell them to join this Zoom.
They're on
That's
a
fine.
call right now with the seller, so they were just asking me. I'm like, nope, not a good deal.
No. Let's see.
If the lender says no, then you won't get the deal sold because ultimately the fix and flipper is going to go out and look for money, right? And so if it's a bad deal, they're going to get shut down either way. So
Yeah, but like don't because you deal with a lot of hard money lenders and agents, like don't they tell you right away this flipper has no idea what he's doing, or this wholesaler has no idea what he's doing, and then they're
yeah,
coming to fix the deal. It's like,
yeah. I mean, like we kind of have like a little blacklist of like, this person's like, hey, shopping around for the deal, but all the lenders kind of know each other, right? So it's like, nah,
you're
not
not getting
working
away
with this
from
guy.
lenders. They all know each other.
Exactly. Small world.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, let's go back to this real quick. So this is where I'm gonna go one step for you, Luke, because I know you're in step 2 for creative finance. If you wanted to do creative finance, well, you can mess with this, right? Whether it's a 5%, 10%, 15% down, if you know it's an FHA, whatever, right? It's like you can modify these, and actually down here at the bottom, you can actually tweak your numbers. Okay. Like this calculator is fully customizable. But anyways, let's say you're trying to do a deal and the seller is okay with, let's say 10% down. Well, that changes everything, right? 10% on this, you'll have to get their exact PITI, of course, and override it. Like once you get their exact PITI and you override it, and let's say you know what their seller finance is, if there is a hybrid, you literally just plug the numbers in and it'll still populate and tell you how much you can make. Like this deal right now is still crap, right? So it's like, just take that into consideration. Notice here, we did not put anything for renovation or assignments. If you want to make money on this deal, well, you need to put all the actual details. And it's like we assumed renovation, if we're going to turn it into a rental, let's say, is 22,000. So I'll just put 22,000 in here. Right? If you want to make a 5K assignment fee, because this deal's so slim anyways, or you want to make more, let's say 10,000, then you probably need to lock up this deal a lot lower than that. Like just because it's a sub 2 deal, just because it's a seller finance deal, just because it's some sort of hybrid creative deal, period, does not mean it's a good deal. Just because you lock it up for a good down payment doesn't mean it's a good deal. The deal still needs to cash flow, still needs to have a certain cash on cash return. Here's an example. I'm assuming their PITI is 1821, and I know the rent rates are 3,000. They're asking 319. I'm going to give them 10% down. And a wholesaler comes to me with this deal. I know the wholesaler is going to make 10K. They come to me, sure, it makes $700 a month in cash flow. But my cash on cash return, me as an investor at 11%, I'll never do the deal. Because I'm the type of buyer that wants to see at least 15, maybe at least 12, right? And so that requires the assignment to go down. It requires maybe the rehab to be adjusted. It requires something, right? Maybe the down payment to the seller. And it's like, okay, well, cash down is 31,000 plus your assignment fee plus whatever renovation. Well, how much is that? That's $63,000 down on a $300,000 property. That's more than 22%. Most investors won't invest in that deal. They're the ones that are in sub 2 because they want to lock up deals under 20%. It's like you found a good deal, but you're either asking too much or the rehab's too much or the down payment's too much, and it's hard for you to dispo it. Now, here's another thing. Let's say someone sent me this deal and I want to use private money to acquire this deal. Whether it's an interest rate or a private money partner, whatever you want to do, right? At the end of the day, I'm going to assume it's an interest rate. You're going to pay them for, a year, 2 years, 5 years. I don't really care. That's your relationship at that point. But it's like now you're going to make negative. Now this deal really should be locked up a lot better than that. Maybe, if I lock it up at 5%, it's still not that great. So really, I need to get this purchase price down to, let's say, I don't know, let's just say 270 for it to be a deal, for it to make finally 244 after paying private money every month. Because I see so many people trying to find private money partners for creative deals. And there's a lot of deals out there that, by the way, the taxes and insurance, like in Florida, it kills deals. In Texas, it kills deals. There's so many sub 2 deals in Texas right now that are moving. Yeah, the insurance alone. It literally kills the deal. It's like, it's not like it was last year. Yeah, need underwrite for 2x to 3x. Yeah. I would just call up, a few insurance companies and get some quotes. If you plan on targeting a company, a particular property, like that would be a good solution. Because here's the thing: you take over their PITI in a subject to deal. Guess what? You're still getting insurance in your name transferred, you're getting another layer of insurance. It's like if you want to do it properly to protect yourself. It's like the same thing though. It's like you go through, let's say you buy a property, whether it's a fourplex, a single family, multifamily, I don't care what it is. The moment you go through title and they appraise it for a new higher purchase price and it gets recorded in the tax assessor, well, guess what? Your taxes are more expensive now than what the previous seller was paying. So you got to take that into consideration. Like those are really important things. Taxes increases the change of ownership. Interest changes on change of ownership. Especially if it's operated as a business. And so you got to take that into consideration. And so, yeah, escrow payments on creative. Absolutely. So there's a lot more things, of course, you want to take into consideration. But at the end of the day, this calculator will evaluate a creative deal. It'll evaluate a sub 2, a hybrid, a finance. It'll analyze a cash deal, a traditional method, an FHA loan. It'll evaluate everything. It doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, is this cash per door, is this cash on cash return adequate enough for the investor that yourself is buying or the investor that you plan on assigning it to? And if you're a private money lender and you evaluate this deal, you're like, okay, well, someone's inviting me here to be a private money partner. Let's say I take this off because there will be no interest at that time. Now let's just do this. 0. And the wholesaler, the person who plans on buying this deal is asking for a private money partner, and it nets 948 at a 20% cash on cash return. Yet you're the one funding that $63,000. What's your cash on cash return? Because if you're agreeing to partner with them for 50%, well, now your cash on cash return is 10% because you're only getting half of the proceeds, half of the equity. There's a lot of lenders that are okay with that. You'll still make 400 and what is it, $80 on this deal, funding 60 grand or whatever, how much. They'll be okay with that. Making a 10% cash on cash return on their money, ROI is decent. But that's why a lot of deals aren't moving. It's because we aren't actually evaluating deals. We're just like, oh yeah, this deal, I locked it up at 10%. Whoop-de-doo. Then I'm going to assign it and make 10K on it. Most creative deals, and I know I'm jumping into creative right now, but like most creative deals that are underwritten, you get paid, let's say $1,000 to $2,000 per $100 of net cash per door. It's like if the property nets 300, or like in this case 900, like it could be anywhere between $9,000, $18,000 assignment because it's a really good deal. But at the same time, if it was only netting, let's say $200, number one, not a lot of people would want to buy that. Might as well call it break even at that point. You might not make any money. A few thousand to $5,000 on an assignment fee. This is why cash deals make more money in assignments. But at the same time, I'm still going to tell you, go find creative deals because we will all buy them, at the end of the day. That's why every single mentor will tell you, go find creative deals because they want to buy them from you. You eventually want to buy your own creative deals. But learning that skill is another thing. But the most important thing is really just learning how to underwrite that deal. Because here's the thing, right? If you know this is going to be a cash deal and your end buyer is buying it cash, well, then just change it to cash. Change it to cash. And you're good. You don't really have to mess with anything else. Calculator does it for you and tells you they're going to make this money. As long as that buyer agrees to that cap rate, you're good. But anyways, there's a lot more things you can do with this calculator. Okay. Especially when it comes to the private money section. Okay. There's a lot more things. This is for more advanced tactics, how we do, I think on one of our previous videos when it went on luxury flips, right? We analyzed how to analyze the luxury deal or whatever. We went over this calculator in very detail, using private money for those deals. But at the same time, you really need to understand the basics when it comes to this one, because whether you're in sub 2 or you're in TTP or you're in Jamil's Astro or you're in somebody else's real estate community, they all use a version of this calculator, this basic one. The one that you see directly in front of you, the one I have highlighted. They use that one. Well, what is this one? It is literally the same thing, just turned, was it vertical or horizontal? So I can see more deals. It's literally the same thing. Yet no one's just thought of to create something like this, right? And so it's like, use these. If your goal is MLS outreach, so then list every single property on the MLS. Literally just list them all. And the moment you find something green, give it a call. To really determine what type of renovation budget is needed in that property. What's really going on? If it's an all-market deal, you really don't care about motivation and timeline. They want to sell ASAP. It's on the market for a reason. You really care about the renovation and the purchase price. And so I would suggest using this one first to quickly analyze the deal. And then if you know you got it locked up or, you know, coming close, well, then reevaluate it using this and deep dive and determine if it's, of course, it's a rental or let's say a flip, and deep dive into those and reconfirm your numbers before you actually lock it up. Because here's the thing, an acquisition person, a bird dog, a whatever you want to call it, can go on the MLS right now and probably find 50 deals every single day. Yeah, there's a lot of people in here right now that are like, oh, how do I get into a deal? Or better yet, here's this one. The problem is getting it. Where do I start? Do I do on market or off market? Should I wholesale or acquire? I have to talk to people and so forth. But anyways. Does everybody in here understand the basics of underwriting if they were to use this calculator? Or does anybody need another example to go through or have any questions on how to use this calculator or how to underwrite in general? Glad to hear that. What about everybody else? Okay. Can I move on to doing rehab estimates? Can we actually deep dive into that kind of stuff? Or do we need more time doing underwriting? Colin, here, I'll put it in the chat one more time. If you don't have it, go to that link. And it's basically right here. If you click on calculators, it'll open up a Google Drive. Just click on that. Okay, let's do the rehabs. Okay, cool. So next week's session, we're going to go over rehabs, but at the same time, we're going to use this calculator again, because that's the whole point is the reps, right? We're going to be using the underwriting while we're doing, you know, our rehab estimates. The whole most important thing is using it repeatedly so you know it, like doing it on the back of a napkin, right? And your deals are consistently evaluated the same way over and over and over again. Because if they are, so here's where the only thing you're going to screw up in evaluating a deal, realistically, if you use a calculator. You put the wrong rehab or you put the wrong ARV. Realistically. This is why we're so focused on comping and underwriting, right? And then, of course, rehab estimates. And so we're going to go over it as much as needed. I know this time was shorter than last week's, but it's mainly calculators. Like what is there to it? It's really following the steps, filling everything that's in blue. Does anybody not know how to use a spreadsheet in here? Considering I'm not seeing any comments. Yeah, LOL. Yeah. But it's funny, Luke, because there are people who don't know how to use a spreadsheet. There are people that don't know how to use a phone. There's people who don't know how to use a computer. You'd be surprised. Just a matter of acclimation. I mean, yeah, but there's a lot of people that don't want to learn. And it's like, you could attend these Zooms right now and not implement what you learned. That's a whole different problem, right? So is mindset. So is a lot of things. So is taking the first step, taking action. But you can listen to this video and just let it go in one ear out of the other, or you could actually start using it, whether that's testing it on market deals right now. Literally fill it up. It'd be nice. I want to see this. Like if we come in next week, right, and we're going over the rehab, you know, estimates and stuff. Let's see if like not 50 per day. But let's see if you guys can pull up at least 10 properties using that calculator. Just make a copy of it. And let's see some deals next week. and we can look at them together. Because that's really what it is. Think about it. You fill up that list, the MLS version, you fill that up with 50 properties, you're going to get a deal. Whether you like it or not, you're going to get a deal. If you call every single one of those that were good deals, you're going to get a deal. So who wants to fill up 10 properties on the thing and have it ready by next week? This is really where it's like, who's going to take action? Yeah, it commits. Anyways, guys, I appreciate you guys for being here today. If you want to bring some properties for next time for me to look at, I'll look at them. Next week, we'll be going over rehab estimates. Okay. And of course, there is offers, paperwork, and deal financing after that. The Zooms will always be at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, Eastern time. Same Zoom link. I appreciate all you guys for being here. You're welcome, of course. Education should be free and resources should be free. That's how I believe it. All right. Appreciate you all. I will see you guys next time. Thank you.